I actually saw the stick and the stone, so there you go. After all those times I was watching it. Good morning, I'm Glenn Garvin. I am one of the pastors here on staff at Newport Mesa Church, and I'm just excited to be bringing the word to you this morning. We are here because we are wanting to help you build a relationship with Jesus Christ. And so whether you're here with us this morning or you're online with us, that's exactly what we want to do. And we're going to do that by focusing on 4 conversations. We're going to focus on knowing God. We're going to focus on finding freedom. We're going to focus on discover your purpose, growth track, and make a difference. So that's what we're all about. So we've been talking about sticks and stones. We've been talking about the power of words. Last week, Jordan brought a word, right? He brought a word. Actually, he brought the word. I know, there's all these puns and double entendres, right? Do you not get that? He brought the word like he did a good job of doing that. Okay, anyways. He brought the word, right? The creator, God, Jesus Christ, being the creator of all things, the word. So today, I get to talk about our words, and I absolutely love the fact that I get to talk about our words. I get to talk about the power of our words, and so I gave it today a really creative sermon title, okay? It's Living a Helium Life. Oh, thank you for that. Appreciate that. I know. Thank you. Yes. Living a helium life. I don't know. I just like helium. It's fun, and we're going to explore a little bit about that today. But first, I want to start with some myths about words, right? Put this up here. What's some myths about words? Do women really speak more words than men in a day? See, you fell into this, right? Yes, that's what the word on the street is. No, there's another pun. It's actually not true. That's a myth. So yeah, we have bought into a false narrative. I really found out where that study came from, and it's kind of funny because they got together a small group of kindergartners, and they watched how they played, and they listened to the boys and they listened to the girls, and they're like, oh yeah, boys don't talk that much. Are you kidding me? Yeah, if you watch kindergarten boys, I mean, there's all grunting, right? It's all grunting and growling and noises and everything. That's a horrible place to do a study. So they did it. They updated the study, 2007, but they updated the study, and they actually did a real study. They put little devices on people's ears, and they picked up their conversation, and they did a sampling and all this cool stuff. Can I just tell you, there was no statistical significance between the difference of how many words women speak with how many words men speak. So women speak a little over 16,000. Men do speak a little under 15,000. But really, in a day, guys can word it up anytime. And I just want to let you know that is just not a true myth, right? So this whole thing about words. And the other thing I want to do is I want to do a little science. Now, I like to do a little science because obviously if I title the sermon, Living a Helium Life, you may think that there's an object lesson, right, about helium. Well, you would be right, and that is this. I want to ask you this question. You can put this up on the screen here. Let's talk about science. What's the difference between helium, and I have to get this right, sulfur hexafluoride? How many of you know? How many of you know what helium is? Oh, that's right. I appreciate that. How many of you know what helium is? Okay, how many of you aren't listening or just really don't like lifting your hand? I get it. But really, maybe there's just a few that know what sulfur hexafluoride is, right? And so, yeah, I could just talk about the words, but I need to do a little illustration. Doing a little illustration, it's always a little scary doing an illustration because if they backfire, people could die. And so, but not you. We won't kill anybody here. If I disappear or something happens, I'll see you in heaven. So, 2 balloons. Let's say one is filled with helium, right? And let's say that one is filled with sulfur, what is it again here? Hexafluoride. You can tell I'm not a scientist. Okay, what do you think, what's going to happen when I release these 2 balloons? What do you think is going to happen? Yellow one is helium. The blue one is I was just seeing if you're listening. What do you think is going to happen? Think helium, because you know about helium. That is so cheating. Okay, here we go. Ready? Wow. That's impressive. Helium is a lighter gas. It's not the lightest gas, but it is a lighter gas. And because of that, it is going to float, right? It's going to lift. I'd rather say lift than float. It's going to lift. And so to really help out a little bit more, let's see the effects of helium on my voice, right? I know. It's awesome. Okay, here we go. Let's hope I don't die.
Living a helium life. Thank you very much.
That was it. All right. Now, this one, let's say this is sulfur hexafluoride, and what's going to happen with this one? Ready? Here we go. Getting a little dizzy. Okay, nothing, because really, sulfur hexafluoride is really expensive, and there's no way I'm going to spend $1,000 on an object lesson. So, okay, yeah. Have you heard it on? If you just YouTube it, if you hear it on YouTube, you can watch people. It lowers their voice, and it is hilarious. So you got Mickey Mouse, and you got I'm not going to say any names. That's dangerous. So you got high and you got low. But what I wanted to point out is that helium lifts. That's why I like talking about it in terms of our words, because we lift people with our words. I also want to talk about how rare helium is, and how rare these days, how rare our words are for lifting people, good words. All right, so another one, there's another science thing I want to talk about, and you can put this one up here, and that is, here it is. What do words have in common with oxytocin? Okay, what do words have in common with oxytocin? So oxytocin is a hormone that the body naturally produces, and it's called the love hormone. It's called the love hormone because it is a bonding agent, and when good things happen in our brain, it literally bonds us to other people. The most common place this is happening is between mothers and babies. So I'm looking at Tara because, she's got babies, and I understand that bonding, oxytocin floods the brain, and with both parties, it allows this love bond to happen, right? So, they've done a study. It's a kindness study, but I'm going to borrow it because I believe the good words is very close to being kind, and so I'm going to borrow this. But every time you are speaking a good word into somebody else's life, or you're being kind into somebody else's life, you are causing their brain to have a bump in oxytocin, right? So it's kind of like you're a good drug pusher, but it's really their own drug, so don't get carried away with that. You are giving them a bump in oxytocin when you are kind to another person. Now, also, the study also addressed it's a neurotransmitter. It's called dopamine. And what happens is dopamine is another neurotransmitter. It's things that happen in the brain, and it gives a feeling of euphoria. So one hormone is called the love drug, which is really made in our own brains. The other one is dopamine, and it's called the helper's high, because I want to point out something that is really unique about these two different hormone things. One is that not only does the person you speak to get a bump in oxytocin and in dopamine, but guess what? The person that gives it gets a boost in oxytocin and in dopamine. Did you know that? Of course you knew that. You guys are all so smart. I just think that's amazing. The creator of all, that made our minds and our brains and our bodies, has made it so that when you give, you get. See that? Is that a great cycle? So we talk about the power of words. We talk about when you are doing good, you are giving kindness, when you're giving good words, there is benefit both to the receiver and the giver. I just think that's amazing. I might be the only one impressed with that, and I think it's crazy good that people can do that. In fact, a few weeks ago, one of our own, Robeck, is she here? Is she just anywhere in the building? She's with the babies. Of course, she's serving. That's wonderful. So she was highlighted, and you can look it all up online and all that stuff, but she was highlighted because she has got an organization she started. her and her mom put this together, letsbekind.org. But what happened is she started this whole huge thing of doing kindness on Costa Mesa High School. And thousands of them participated. They did it in 2018. Now they did it again in 2019. Let's be kind on a high school. That's a place to do it, right? This is a great place to be kind. And I want to let you know, so when Rebecca was doing this campaign, she literally was having folks going around pushing those little oxytocin and those little dopamine buttons, and people were having a small bump of love and bonding and great feelings when she does that. I just think that's very cool. Thank you, Rebecca. All right, I want to put up on the screen here. Yes, Rebecca can take a bow for that. Good job. You realize you're clapping, she's not here, but I'm sure people will tell her. It's like, hey, people clap for you this morning. I want you to take a deeper dive. Up on the screen is a link, and it's bit.ly, and what happens is this will take you to the newportmesa.org and load a PDF that's got all of this stuff that I'm talking about in the background. You can do a deeper dive by clicking on it and reading through. There's a lot of scriptures in there. In fact, the scriptures take you through Proverbs, which are words of wisdom. Right? Solomon and his brain team put this book together. It's full of wisdom. You know the difference between knowledge and wisdom? Okay, wisdom is applied knowledge, and so there are 31 chapters. When I was a teenager, I used to read one proverb every day. Every day I read a proverb, an entire chapter, not just a verse. It's a wisdom book. All of the wisdom words about words are in this notes that you can download yourself. All right, so that's taking a deeper dive. So another question I want to ask you is, do our words really have power? Right? Do our words really have power? Well, I believe they do. I believe that's exactly what this series is about, right? Sticks and stones. I don't know if we've ever actually said the poem or the phrase. I should have done a little bit on that. Sticks and stones may... But, is that true? Wow, isn't that something? So somebody wrote this down, and I think it was a way to try to help people really ignore bad words that come at you. But it's not true at all, right? Bones heal, and pretty soon you forget about them. In fact, guys are really proud of scars and broken bones, so there you go, guys. But words do what? They wound forever. Bad words are really, really difficult to get rid of. Negative words in your life spoken, especially when you were young, but really anytime, really difficult to get over. Words are very, very powerful. I believe they are. All right, I believe they have power. One proverb I want to put up here, Proverbs 18:21. The tongue can bring death or life. Death or life. You have been given the responsibility, you've been given the opportunity to either speak all the time, death or life. Man, like what if I just said to you, I'm only going to give you 10,000 words today, and we're going to watch how you use those 10,000 words. How many of those words, what percentage would be spent on speaking good words to those you love and those around you? You have the ability to speak either life or death. Man, I just think that's powerful. All right, let's start with Jesus. I want a passage out of Mark, Jesus modeling the use of good words. So Mark in chapter 10, verses 13 through 16, we're going to look at it here. This is a very familiar passage to some of you. One day, some parents brought their children to Jesus so he could touch them and bless them. But the disciples scolded the parents for bothering him. When Jesus saw what was happening, he was angry with his disciples. He said to them, "Let the children come to me, don't stop them. For the kingdom of God belongs to those who are like these children. I tell you the truth, anyone who doesn't receive the kingdom of God like a child will never enter it." Then he took the children in his arms and placed his hands on their heads, and he blessed them. A few weeks back, I had the opportunity to talk to the Royal Family Kids Mentoring Club. It was at a training. And I use this verse, I just really, really love this verse because of what it says about children. And I love the way Mark says, and it's a whole other version, but he says, do not hinder children coming to Jesus. Do not stop children from coming to Jesus. And I talk about, do you know how often adults do things in a child's life to block or to stop or to hinder a child knowing God? By the way they live, by the words they say. It is really, really, a lot of times, adults get in the way, they hinder. And I was just fascinated when I began to look at this verse, especially how Jesus tenderly treated the children and how he blessed them. I got into that word bless. Now I want to do a little Greek thing. I am not Greek, and neither do I. I went to Greece. Does that count? But I do want to show you the word that Jesus used there for bless is not what we would think of normally as blessing. The New Testament has two Greek words for bless. One is makario. I'm going to, Russ Fittler's here. I think I should come up and here. There it is. Come up and pronounce these words so I don't mess it up. Makario, and that makes make happy. How many of you understand hashtag blessed? Everybody thinks of it as what? Make happy, right? Are you with me? Blessed, make happy. That's the normal. But Jesus uses a different word here, and this is where I'm going to end up messing it up here. It's pronouncing this. And that is, he uses the word, why don't you put it up on the screen? This is a little bit out of order. There it is. Eulogio. Is that close enough? Eulogio? Eulogio. Eulogio. I'm saying it over and over because I'm trying to see if you, does it sound familiar? Eulogio. Eulogio. Let me give it to you in English. Eulogy. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. Eulogy. So, the word eulogy is made up of these two Greek words, eu, which is well, and logio, which is word. And when you combine them, it is speaking well words. So eulogy it is giving good words, but the other question is, where do you normally hear a eulogy? And this might be for older people for sure. Because young people never think of dying. They never die, so there's like eulogy. Where do you hear a eulogy? At a funeral. What a great word to give over people that have died. It's like they just really do not benefit from speaking good words over people that have died. But we speak good words of them to let them know how they lived. Let me just offer this. What if we moved the word eulogy into our everyday life instead of waiting until people die? What if we spoke good words into people's lives before they die? Wouldn't that be nice, right? They get the bump of oxytocin, right? They get that's not going to help with the person that's dead at all. That's not going to happen. But we have an opportunity to do that in this word eulogy. If you could go back, I think here's the Hebrew blessing I want to talk about. If you're wondering, what did Jesus say when he blessed the children? This is probably what he said. It's a Hebrew blessing over children back in the day. After the father, says the Talmud, had laid his hands on a child's head, he led him to the elders one by one, and they also blessed him and prayed that he might grow up famous in the law, faithful in marriage, and abundant in good works. That is a Hebrew blessing, most likely that Jesus blessed and prayed over the children. But the whole idea was that Jesus spoke good words over the kids. The power of good words spoken over people. And more, really, if you want to look at it this way, what does it do when we speak good words over children? It changes their future. Now, I believe that the things happen when we speak good words over each other, and I believe it goes right into the New Testament about how we treat one another. The New Testament is filled with one another's. But this one is really cool, speaking good words over and in one another. All right? So, Words, like gases, have the power to do a couple things. Words can either lift or words can lower. Now, you notice I didn't really go into a lot of detail of what bad words do, negative words, criticism, tearing people down. I think we have all experienced that, and I really don't need to speak too much about what words do in that context. I was going to do a whole dialogue about how often one negative word, what it does in a person's life, how long it lasts, and how hard it is for somebody to change that negative opinion of themselves, right? And I thought, you know what? I just want to focus on what we can do to speak good words. I want to stay right there. And to do that, I want to tell you a story from my childhood growing up. Now, I already filled you in a little bit. If you were here a few weeks ago, I had come up and told a little bit of my story, but I've had 2 moms and 3 dads. I was adopted at 4 years old. And the family that I was adopted into, everything was going okay for a while, but the father of that family that I was adopted into was an alcoholic. And his drinking, it began to escalate over the period of life. So stress and all these other things were going on in his life, and alcohol got worse and worse and worse. Now, growing up in an alcoholic's home, I can tell you this, not all alcoholics are the same. I usually have this conversation with children of alcoholics. Everybody thinks, well, you know, that alcoholics act a certain way. Well, really, there are happy drunks, there are mean drunks, there are fall-down stupid drunks. There is a variety of different drunks, right? And so I can't say that you would be fortunate, but you know, maybe if you had a happy drunk in your life, it wouldn't be all that bad. But my adopted father, when he was sober, the sweetest guy in the world. Everybody loved him. He was kind. He was positive. It was just amazing. The hard part is he wasn't sober all that often. And when he was drunk, he used a lot of harsh words. There were a lot of harsh words in our family thrown around. There were a lot of cussing. And my mother is like, what is she, 5 feet? I think she's 5'1", and so she's little, but she's powerful. And so when my dad would speak really awful things at her, or they'd get into fights, she could kind of take care of herself. I remember she picked up lamps and she picked up brooms, and they would start throwing things, and it kind of got ugly. But that was the environment that I grew up in. So that's the context of the story. I was raised in the 60s. I was about 8 years old, and I had a bike. It had long handlebars. It had a banana seat, and in the back it had a sissy bar. It was not a Schwinn. I have people ask me, was it a Schwinn? I say, no, it was a Schwinn-alike. It was a knockoff. It was a hand-me-down, right? But I love this bike, and I also hated this bike. I love this bike because I love to ride my bike. I hated it because it broke all the time. It was always breaking down. And I got on my bike one day, and I was riding it down the sidewalk, and the chain fell off again. And I got off the bike, and I was looking at it. I was very frustrated. I really had not got too far. I was just a couple houses down. But it happened to break down in the driveway of one of my neighbors. It was just 2 doors down. His name is Stan. Now, Stan, I will set this up so you understand where I'm coming from. Stan was retired, so I thought he was very old when I was a little kid. Come to discover that he got much older, and it was very unusual for me to realize, I guess he wasn't that old when I was a kid. But he was retired, and so his house was immaculate. I mean, it was beautiful. It was, you know, a white house, a green trim. It was just gorgeous, and the lawn was just this lush green. It was always very well manicured. He came out with little manicured scissors, I'm sure, and he trimmed the grass, and it was all going the right direction, and it was just gorgeous. And he comes out, and he says, hey, Glenn, do you need some help? And I thought, yeah, I need some help. My chain fell apart, and I was kind of frustrated. And he's like, okay, so let's see what we can do. And he picks the bike up with one hand, and we begin to walk up the driveway of Stan's house. Now the driveway was one of these beautiful driveways with grass strips, right, in the middle, and then the cement on the sides. And we're walking up this gorgeous driveway with this house, and then we come to Stan's garage. And even as a little kid, I tell you, I thought I heard an angelic choir as I began to see the garage at Stan's house. It was like, oh, because this garage was just amazing. The floor was shiny and clean. It's like you could eat breakfast off of the floor. And everything in the garage was pristine. Everything was gorgeous. The washer and dryer over here, and they were clean. There's no soap scum. There's no weird things. There's no black widows. There's no cobwebs. It's all clean. And you pan your eye around the garage, and he had beautiful custom cabinets that are built in. And I just felt good coming into Stan's garage and realizing this is just amazing. But it was on the left that really caught my attention. So on the left, there was a giant pegboard. And on that white pegboard, there were hundreds of shiny, clean tools, all hanging orderly. And every tool had a black outline around it. Now, those of you who are retired going, yeah, that's exactly what we do when we're retired. We get to do that stuff. And I was just this little kid. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I wonder if this is heaven. No, I didn't really say that. So Stan takes my bike, and like I said, with one hand, he flips that bike upside down, and he begins to do the guy thing where he's looking at it, and he's grunting. He's like, let's look at it here. And he's trying to surmise what the problem is. And as he's talking to me, I am picking up that this guy is like a master bicycle mechanic. I mean, I could just tell he knows things about bikes. And he begins to work on the bike. And pretty soon, he has discovered the problem. And he's looking at it, and he looks down, and he starts to work on the chain, because the chain had fallen off, and he works on the chain. And then, he says, oh, yeah. So here's what happens. He walks over to that pegboard, and off of it, he picks up the half-inch open-ended wrench. Like hundreds of tools. There's hundreds of tools over there. And he goes over and he looks at the lug nut and he looks at the tool and he's like, yeah, that's the one. I mean, really? That's crazy. And he brings it over and he begins working on the bike. And he starts loosening up the lug nut and he starts doing all this stuff. And then pretty soon, he turns to me and he says, do you know about the master link? But he doesn't say it like that. He whispers it. He's like, do you know about the master link? And I'm thinking it's like, this is secret code, man. This is man code, right? This is man code, and I don't know. I don't know what this is. He's like, oh, let me tell you about the master link. And so he shows me on the chain where there is one link that is a special link on the chain. And that one link allows you to take the chain apart to work on it. And I am just amazed. Did you know that a chain comes apart right there at that special link? And that link is called the master link. Aren't you impressed? Do you feel smarter today? I mean, come on. You've had sulfide hexafluoride, and now you've got master link. I mean, what more do you want? And he begins to work on it. And so he's there, and he's got my bike chain, and then all of a sudden, he begins to he fixes the bike chain, and he's got the tool, but then he turns to me, and he says, here, you try it. And he extends the wrench to me. And I am afraid. I'm afraid because I don't know what to do with the wrench. I don't know what to do with the tool. I have never used the tool for its proper purpose in my life, right? If you know what I'm talking about as a guy, you just grab stuff and you just start beating on things. And so I was a little afraid. He's like, no, go ahead. Take the wrench. And I took the wrench, and it felt good in my hand. I just didn't know what to do with it. And so he guided my hand down to the rear lug nut, the rear axle, and I'm just waiting. And then he imparts more man code to me. He clears his throat first. And then he says it. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. It's right. Right to tighten, left to loosen. Like, Sensei, nice. And so he helps me begin to tighten the lug nut on my bicycle. But then he pauses again, and he looks at me, and I know there's going to be like this brilliant man code coming out of his mouth. And I'm just waiting eagerly, like, what's next, master, you know? And the next 4 words out of his mouth completely transformed my life. Really. I cannot even tell you the power of these 4 words and what it did to me as a child and what it did to me still now, many, many, many years later. Because he looked right in my eye and he said these 4 words. You do that well. And the impact of those words just hit me because I had not really had a lot of affirming words in my life. I did not have a lot of circumstances that I felt good about myself, and I certainly did not feel good about the world around me. But when Stan, this master mechanic, who took the time to work on my bike, spoke those words in my life, something changed. You know what a kid like me at 8 years old does with a phrase that says, you do that well? I repeat it like an MP3 loop in my brain. You do that well. You do that well. Stan said, I do this well. So when I was feeling down, I was feeling frustrated, what words did I want to gravitate towards? I wanted to gravitate towards Stan's words. You do that well. Now watch this. This is a big leap. After repeating that phrase many, many times when I was a kid, you do that well, I made the big leap to this. Maybe there are other things that I can fix as well. Maybe there are other things that I can do. You see how that works? The power of those words not only took residence in me, but began to inspire me to become something different. Now, I fix a lot of stuff today. When I was a kid, my younger sister is here. She can verify this. I broke a lot of things when I was younger. I was very curious. I took apart things. I took apart a lot of things. I took apart my parents' refrigerator. I took apart I took apart my mom's television. I took apart everything. All of the outlets, all of the electric sockets in our entire house all had black marks on them. Why? Because I stuck things in the sockets, and they all had black marks. But eventually, I figured out that I can fix things. What do your words do to have the power of life? Do we have the possibility of living a helium life? I believe we do. I believe it is a gift to us, and when used well, it is a gift to others. Right? I want to close with this because I just want to tell you a little bit about Stan later on. I was 8 when I met Stan and Louise, and I thought they were very old. I already explained that to you. Well, it just so happens, really, it is providential because I believe that this is how things happen. 20 years later, I run into Stan and Louise. Back in the Long Beach home, I run into Stan and Louise back in the Long Beach area, and like, wow, I thought they were old then, but now, 20 years later, it's like, phew. And I talk a little bit with Louise, and she ends up connecting with me, and she says, hey, she said, I want to let you know, Stan has stomach cancer. I'm like, oh. And she said, he's in Long Beach Community Hospital, and he is asking to see you. I'm like, oh, of course. Absolutely. And it's a much longer story. But eventually over time, because I was going there, like once a week, and I was talking with him a lot, and there was a lot of ups and downs in this conversation. But eventually, I was able to pray with Stan when he received Jesus in the hospital. And 2 days later, he died. And Louise said, "Can you do Stan's funeral?" And I said, "Absolutely." So when I talk about doing a eulogy, when I talk about I was able to bury one of my childhood heroes right here, Forest Lawn, Cypress, and talk about why he was a hero in my life to his children and grandchildren, all gathered around a tree for a graveside service. I mean, come on, really? The stories of God are really, really long. And then I want to let you know the strange thing is, strange to me, it was 18 years later, I got a call from Stan and Louise's daughter, and they said, "Hey, Mom has died. Can you do Louise's funeral? Because she wants to be buried next to her husband." I said, "Absolutely." So I had the honor and the privilege of doing these folks' funerals and talking about the power of words that they had in my life. So I want to challenge you on a couple things. Come on, go ahead and stand with me this morning. I want to challenge you to look differently at the words that we use, the words that we use towards our children, your children, children in general, children that you see running around screaming at Target, children that you see wherever you're at, family, church. I want to challenge you to think about the words that you speak over children. But I also want to challenge you to think about the words that you speak over each other. And that you understand how much power you have, God-given ability to speak those words into other people's lives. And lastly, I want to let you know, I don't know if you're young or old, if you're here, you're online. I don't know if you're a student or you're as old as dirt like Stan was. But Stan literally gave his life to Christ at the last possible minute. And I want to let you know, that's all right. If you are here and you have not committed your life to Christ, I would say, call out on God. He hears you. Ask Him to come into your life. Ask Him to change you. Ask Him to transform your life. And that you would give over your life today to Jesus Christ. It's the best thing that you could ever do here, and it certainly is the best thing you could ever do for eternity. That's what I would ask. Let's pray. Father, bless those who have the ability to bring good words, to speak those good words, to speak blessings over everyone around us. It is such a privilege to do this. Remind us of these things. Holy Spirit, bring your word back to our remembrance to do these things. Thank you for that. Thank you for those who've committed their life to Christ and said yes to Jesus. In your name, amen. God bless you.